Okay, so in this week's spiritual journey, we have Viv Chamberlin Kidd. Hi, Viv.
Hello.
Viv is a shamanic practitioner, an essential oil enthusiast, and a poet. So, Viv, I want to start by asking you, how did you become a shamanic practitioner?
Well, I was brought up a Christian, so my
Okay.
dad's a priest,
Mm-hmm.
and we went to church. I went to church until I was probably about 18. Didn't particularly gel with quite a lot of the people there, that sort of thing of you're not really walking the walk, talking the talk sort of thing. And so took a break from that, didn't really do anything spiritual for quite a while. And then I went on a thing called the Hoffman process after I had my kids.
Okay.
And as part of that, it's looking at you as they call it a quadrinity. So that you've got a body, so you've got a physical body, yeah. You've got emotions, you've got intellectual mind, but you've also got a spiritual self. And obviously I've been brought up knowing about the spiritual side. But I thought, yeah, I need to honour my spiritual side somehow. So after doing that process, which was 7 days, had a lot of sort of shamanic things in it, but other things as well. I started thinking, how could I do that? So I, looked into Buddhism and all sorts of other things as well, and thought, I don't want a religion. I want something that's just honouring my spiritual side. And so I found a book written by the person I then went on to be taught by.
Okay.
So I went and saw her, had a soul
Mm.
retrieval, and that was that. Thought, I need to train with this woman. She's amazing.
So when you read the book, did stuff just resonate with you, and did it just make sense?
I got to a certain point in the book where this lady was talking about being down an abyss. I can't remember. I think it's called the void. And I stopped and I went, I'm down there somewhere. And I can remember the point in my life. It was just mad and really quite weird. I remembered a point in my life where I knew, when you're reading something and it's just like, I've been there, and you don't know how. And I stopped reading the book and got in touch with her straight away. Said I need a soul retrieval. So.
Oh wow. So you now offer soul retrievals, don't you, for other people? So can you explain a bit? I'll share my experience in a bit, but can you explain what a soul retrieval is?
Okay, so shamanically speaking, we all have a soul, but it can fragment. So the best way to explain it is to try and do it in terms of, say, somebody who you might be talking to and they said they had a car crash and they felt like they went a bit to pieces. I mean, we actually vocalize it like that. Or somebody who'd gone, I was in love with someone and they broke my heart and they took a piece of me with them. Or when someone's died, quite often people feel like they're still there, or that a bit of them has gone with them. That is probably the best way to explain a soul loss. So it's a bit of you that's not with you anymore. So with the car crash, it could be a bit that's left where you had the car crash. With someone who's died, they may have taken a bit of you with them, and you need those bits back, because the problem being, if you're not spiritually whole, or nature abhors a vacuum, so something can take its place, which might make you feel a bit not yourself, or there can be a spiritual cause for illness, etc., etc. So it's that sort of thing. But it can happen with repeated bullying at school, miscarriage. I mean, it doesn't always have to be horrendous things. It can just be repeated things that just don't gel with you in life, and a bit of just goes, even when you have general anesthetic, a part of you might feel like you've died, and it just goes, oh, I'm dead, I'm off I go.
Yeah, so anything that causes maybe a bit of trauma, so be it emotional or physical. Because so I was reading that book by Alberto Villoldo, Shaman Healer Sage, and there was a part of it, and I'd had this pain in my shoulder for ages, and he mentioned in his book how he'd had a pain in his shoulder for ages, and how it was to do with some sort of claw that was in his shoulder. So as soon as I read that piece, that was when I then messaged you and I said, Viv, I need to see you ASAP.
So that's the bit where, if you've lost a bit of yourself, and people who are energy healers might understand this as well, but it's slightly different, is, like I said, nature abhors a vacuum. So if a bit of you's gone, I mean, it's not like a physical bit of you, but a soul part, then that's where that thing can attach. It's a lot easier to pick up things like that when
Yeah.
you've lost a bit of yourself. And we all are wanting to be whole human beings, to be our best selves. So that's why anybody who's resonating with that would be like, maybe I need to get this sorted. So yeah, that sort of thing where you're feeling, or I quite often get, I feel a bit of a weakness here from some past life stuff. And so if I start feeling something here, I go, has something happened? And that's when I'd start looking into what I can do about it.
Because I'd had this pain in my shoulder, and I've seen, like, I've had loads of chiropractic sessions and fixed my spine, which is completely fine now. You know, I've been to see an osteopath, I've seen a physiotherapist, I've seen everything, and I'm just like, and it still wouldn't go. But since then, the pain in my shoulder. So my experience with Viv was that I'd gone for this session, and Viv said how she'd seen me sat in a cage with a wide open door, and I was shouting and screaming. And you took me out of that cage, and, you know, didn't you? And walked sort of like alongside me. And then since then, honestly, I don't have that same pain in my shoulder. And it's amazing how it works. But I suppose, like, unless you know about how shamanism can work and about shamanic healing, then it might not necessarily be an option that you explore, might it?
Because you think of it as a holy spiritual thing. But what you don't understand is that you can have manifestations of spiritual trauma that come out as physical things, because we have a physical body, and I know we are separate, though, you know, we have that quadrinity, but it's all interconnected. And so things that you can't see can still affect how you move. You know, if somebody sometimes when you've got not particularly great connections with people, especially with things like divorce, somebody might be attached to you, and that sometimes, to me, when I'm dealing with people, looks like some sort of umbilical cord is probably the best way, and that's attached to you from them. That's not something you want. And again, that can be something that I can remove. But if you've got an attachment to your back, it can be just pulling you out. So it's not making you like that, but spiritually it's making you like that, and that can have a definite physical manifestation. Definitely.
Yeah, it's like having to treat the outsidey bits that you can't see, isn't it, to be able to heal the bits that you can see and feel and touch, isn't it? So another thing that you do is power animal retrieval. So I had my own experience with power animals earlier this year when I went and made my shamanic drum. And it's the first time that I've done a shamanic journey and gone, what do you call it, down into the lower world? All right. And in my mind, I thought my power animal was going to be like a bear or an eagle, but, you know, something really like strong. And I couldn't stop laughing, because when I got there, all I could see was this pink flamingo, and I was like, really? That's my power animal? And I was really surprised at first. And then I think when we came back round from it, she was the lady who was running the session said to us, you know, to think about the different attributes that animal has. So for me, I was like, well, it's balanced because it can stand on one leg, and it never really wobbles, and it's a bit different. And I think as well, it's a very sociable, so they're often like all together, but they can stand alone as well. So
they're also exceptionally pretty.
It's very pretty.
Very pink.
So so I was just wondering, can you tell us about what's the importance of, like, does everyone have a power animal?
What I've found from my experience, yes, everybody has got a power animal, whether they've actually got it themselves or not. I would say yes, because every time I've gone to get one for someone, there's normally one just waiting where I go and get them. I would say the importance for me as a shamanic practitioner is, obviously, it tethers me to this world. So when I go on a journey for someone to do healing or whatever, or go and get their power animal, I am going to what we call non-ordinary reality. So the world we exist in is ordinary reality, and that's not. And it tethers me back to here so that I don't get lost, because, you know, it's not a safe thing to do if you don't know what you're doing, to go off into your mind and wander off into a different world. So it tethers me back to here. But the reason I like it for everyone is, firstly, it's part of them anyway. It's part of their soul that they need. Just the plain fact it's called a power animal, I love that. It's for empowerment. It's to be with you when you're going into stressful situations. It's to be with you when things aren't going well. It's like a guardian angel, although I don't like that term, but you know, it's your companion, it's your confidant, it's your person who's just there purely for you. But also it reminds us that we are actually animals, and that we live on a planet that we should be looking after maybe more than we are, and that we try and put ourselves above that, and sometimes that does us a disservice. I know that we're the only animal that could actually wipe off all the animals from the world, but I think if you've got a power animal, it tethers you to that idea that we should have a bit more respect for where we live and our resources and the finiteness of that. So that's one of the things I like.
So do you only have one power animal that stays with you all the time, or just do different power animals come in at different times?
So in my experience, when I've done power animal retrievals for people, sometimes you get two. It's very, very rare. There is normally one primary power animal. I've got loads of spirit animals now who help me with healing and teaching and whatever, but I still have my primary power animal. Over my time with shamanic work, mine has actually changed, but that's quite rare.
Okay.
So you tend to have one, but you know, it has to be one that you resonate with. So I have been aware with someone in the past that they've said, you know, that power animal seemed to work okay for a bit, but now I'm feeling slightly different about it, and I went and did a journey for them and got them a different one, but actually they're now using both. They're sort of complementing each other.
Oh, okay.
So, but you normally have one all the way through.
So in terms of like, why do you think it's important for people to know that they have a power animal?
Because mainly, well, the two things: connection to the earth, and I think when we're feeling more connected to the earth and our animalistic side, I think that's when we can have, I found for me, it's given me more compassion for other people and the journeys they're on. But also just the power side of it. I mean, we see power sometimes as a negative thing, that it's something that can be abused and misused, and I can see that. But I think the more people who feel empowered to be aware of the unique gifts they have to give to the world, the better. We need more people like that, who we are all totally different. Even people you gel with and you think, oh, you've got similar things to me. We're not. We're all totally different. And we have this amazing gift to share with everyone else. And if there's a bit of you that's thinking, oh, I'd like to just be more, and you can see yourself doing that, then a power animal is just gonna, it's got like an exponential boom factor to it for me. And especially, sorry.
No, go you carry on.
Once you've got a power animal and you can start seeing how that can affect you, and I'm not saying you're going to get it and it's going to be, wow, my life has changed. But for me, shamanic work and starting with the power animal and any soul retrieval and stuff, the subtle effects over time that can have for someone is just amazing and empowering, and wow.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating learning about extra things, you know, to me, if you like. So it's like you start off, don't you, generally thinking, right, this is me in the physical body, and then you learn about something energetic wise or about something spiritual wise, and you just end up going down this path, don't you? And I think for me, so I now have, like, I found in Paper Chase this little postcard of a pink flamingo, so that's now like on my kitchen wall as a reminder, and I put it on my vision board as well, because what I found is that it does remind me, you know, to have balance in my life, and that, you know, like work balance and relationships and friends and everything else. And I think, it's just having that visual reminder there that this flamingo is with me, and that's what it's there to sort of remind me to do.
And you can also ask it questions. I mean, people, I don't do this because it's just not the way my brain works, but I know people who, if they're in a shop and they're like, should I get that dress or that dress? They'll just quickly ask the power animal.
I don't know.
But, you know, for some people, that's just a nice way of making a decision that doesn't need to be now that might sound a bit daft, but if that makes your life better and means you've got more time to go and help other people, great. Isn't that great? Definitely. I mean, I've got my power animal on my phone.
Have you? What's your power animal then?
I tend to not share, but I will.
Okay, that's fine.
No, well, it's on on the outside of
my
phone. Mine's now a dragon, but mine changed a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it was actually quite upsetting that the old one went, but it's come back. So I've now, but that's my primary power animal.
Oh, that's so cool. So as well as the soul retrieval and the power animal retrieval, is there any other sort of particular services that you do, or?
So I do, this is going to sound weird because people get a bit freaky when I talk. So I do a thing, I've just done one earlier this week. When people die, especially in our culture where we're not used to knowing where we're going to go. If you're a Christian, you tend to go towards the light. That doesn't always end well, but anyway. I've just made sure that somebody's got to what shamans call the land of the dead.
Okay.
So if you die, especially in circumstances that you weren't prepared for, in a shocking way, like an accident or something, you can end up getting confused and not finding your way to where you should be. And also, we don't live in a shamanic culture. So in a standard shamanic culture, they'd know when you die, you go to the land of the dead. So you'd go and meet your power animal, you'd find your way to the land of the dead. And once you're there, you can find all the soul parts you might not have got through your lifetime and decide what you want to do next. In our culture, we don't have that. We don't have that where you go when you die, other than some idea of heaven and hell. So I can do a thing called psychopumping, which is making sure that's where you get to the right place.
I recently came across this word last week, and I remember thinking I must look up what that means, because I've never heard of that word in my life.
It's a really weird word, believe me. When I learned it, I was like, why is it called that? There is a reason, I can't remember what it is. So I do that. I haven't actually put that on my website yet, but I will, just because I didn't quite know how to word it. But actually there's a lot of people who, again, with that connection thing, when someone dies, they feel they're still around. They shouldn't be still around. They should be where they need to be to get healed and decide what they want to do next. So to me, that's always something that people quite often like, the idea that I've made sure that the person's okay and they're where they should be. Also, for those people who might find all this shamanic talk a bit like, I do a thing called the guided pictures in the stone, which is shamanically inspired and can help people with any blocks or anything they're struggling with. It's a way of tapping into your intuition, but also your spiritual side and that creativity that sometimes we stop ourselves from tapping into. So it's called GPS because it helps you find your way through a roadblock, but it's a guided picture in the stone. So it's a bit like you're looking at pictures in stone and I'm helping you unpack what that means with a very specific purpose in mind. And then I do shamanic coaching, which is a much longer term thing, which is to unpack a bigger problem, but that's where I teach you to journey. So that's quite an exciting thing you can do if you really want to get into shamanic work. Then the first session I teach you to journey, so you go and get your own power animal, and then over a couple of sessions we then sort of you journey and I help you again interpret what that means.
Oh, that sounds exciting. I like that.
I love shamanic coaching. It's so good.
Yeah, like I said, it was only really, I think, when I went and I really felt like I wanted a drum. So I went and made my own shamanic drum earlier this year. And I think from there, just some of the tools, that the shamanic practitioners use, I'm really drawn to and I'm just fascinated by. And at one point in my mind, I was like, I'm going to Peru over the summer because I really wanted to go and meet some shamanic practitioners and just spend time in Peru. Unfortunately, it never happened for whatever reason, but yeah. So obviously a lot of shamanism comes from the olden days and centuries past, etc. So do you think that there's a place now and in this time, and do you think there's a need for shamanism?
Yeah, because I think you've just touched on something that's really important, because you've got Peruvian shamanism, you've got Mongolian shamanism, blah blah blah. So I'm a core shamanic practitioner. So if you hear anybody in this country call themselves a shaman or a shaman, ask them why, because most people in this country don't. Because shamanism is very much based on the culture in which you live, but also on the land, because a lot of the spirits you're talking to are land spirits or plant spirits. So they're native to where that place is. So what you'll find, and why I'm a core shamanic practitioner, is a guy called Michael Harner went and visited all these places because he was a social anthropologist and wanted to find out what are the core things that all shamanic cultures do. Because all the extra stuff is quite different depending on where you are. Because if you're in the Amazon, it's going to be very different from the hills of Mongolia. You know, it's a totally different climate, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And you're working with the elements and the stars and the moon and the sunrise and sunset, and all those things are in different places depending on where you are. So he's the one who brought back the idea that a shamanic practitioner journeys to their spirits to ask for help or guidance to the beat of a drum, hence the shamanic drum. But obviously everything else is then based on where you are in the world. So my teachers, for example, used to live in Scarborough. They now live in Wales. So even that within this, on this island, has made their shamanic practice very, very different, because they used to live on the east coast, and now they live on the west coast. So, you know, the sunrise is different, the sunset is different. So it's always good to know that you're working with the plants that maybe are in your garden, which is going to potentially, the plants in my garden could be very different to the plants in your garden, even though we don't live that far away. So there's firstly that, but secondly, I just think we need more people who are tapped into the power of the earth and all the things I've mentioned in this country, so that we're not sending people to Peru or Mongolia or America or wherever, because part of being a shamanic practitioner, I think personally, and this might not be what everyone says, is respect for the earth. So why travel somewhere else to learn about how they do stuff on a bit of land that isn't your bit of land and where you live, and you can impact where you live? So I think there's a massive place for people to learn a bit more about it, and also from the side of just being nicer people who tap into our compassion and power and have sort of just compassion for other people and what's going on in the world. That's why I resonate with essential oils so much as well, because they're a renewable resource that can be used to help people tap into these things as well. So I sort of married the two together, rather than using other things like crystals or stuff that maybe isn't a renewable resource anymore. And we can find those areas of power with plants, essential oils, herbs, being out in nature. And the more we can get people to do that, the better, because the more maybe people will then realize, let's look after our planet and let's look after each other in a nice way.
Do you think certain people are put off by, so because there are a lot of people that obviously suffer from anxiety, depression, a lot of mental health stuff going on at the minute, but do you think some people are actually put off by the fact that you are a shamanic practitioner? Do you mean that that's the name of it, and because they don't necessarily understand it or know what it is, then maybe they don't want to come because they don't understand the benefits? Or do you know what I mean?
Definitely, because we're not in that culture. Definitely, I'd definitely say that. But I think the more there's people like you and me talking about it, and obviously I've only just set up my website. I've been doing shamanic work since doing my 5 years training, but I've been doing it sort of word of mouth. But I'm now putting myself more out there and talking a bit more about it. I think the more people can, you know, even talking about power animals, if that's all I did for someone was just get them a power animal, that's going to make their life better. And actually, do you really need to know what shamanic work is to understand that that could be a helpful thing? But that, you know, there's quite a few things. I know there's a guy who's still putting out a shamanic magazine. I know the Spirit and Destiny sometimes touch on shamanic work. But it's also one of those things that if somebody, like you were saying, you just trip up over these things and go, I'm going to look into that, or you might just hear someone talk about paranormal, and I'd be saying that's the sort of things that people need to look out for, those things that suddenly they're like, oh, somebody's mentioned that, oh, somebody just mentioned something about that again. But also I'm happy for people to find me sort of when they need to find me. But yeah, let's keep talking about it. Let's keep talking about all the healing modalities that people can tap into and
definitely
and make everybody better.
Because there's so much out there, and you know, I often feel like, I mean, I've had shamanic healing with yourself, and I've had shamanic healing done with another lady, and I've had various different healing modalities done for me, and I do feel like it's, with the healing modalities, it's not always like a one size fits all. It's part of your whole overall healing journey, isn't it? So they might come and find out about the power animal from you, and then they might go and have a Reiki session, they might have hypnotherapy, they might have cancer, whatever it is. And it's just exploring all these different avenues, isn't it? Because they all work so differently as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I trained in Reiki and NLP and EFT. For me, I don't use any of those, but I know people who marry those things. So I've taken the essential oils and shamanism and sort of put them together. I know other people who've done other stuff. But I would say that if you're doing any sort of spiritual stuff, then having a power animal is not gonna, everybody should have one. I just think as a safety precaution myself, because if somebody's sending you somewhere and you don't quite know where that is, you could have gone to like the lower world, upper world, or somewhere, a landscape that you're not used to. And a power animal, if you know it and you're friends with it and stuff, is going to help you come back to here. Because you don't want to leave bits of yourself places.
No.
So yeah, you could have someone come and see me, get a power animal, have a shamanic healing, and then they might think, well, actually, I want to do that regularly because that's just keeping me whole as good as I can be. You might have someone come and see me for a power animal and then think, oh, I'm going to try something else, but that power animal is going to help them whatever they decide to do after.
So yeah, I find it fascinating. And last week I went, so I bought myself a book called Shamanism Made Easy. And a lot of the stuff I'd already sort of read, and some of it was talking about rituals, etc. And I must have read about 10 pages before I went into this Koya class. And at the beginning of the class, you're asked to pick a card. And the card that I picked, I was killing myself laughing because it was shaman. And I was like, I get it, I'm reading about it. And so sometimes it's looking for those, well, not looking, but recognizing, isn't it, the signs and the messages and any synchronicities that are sort of sending people your way. So if anyone is interested in shamanism, whereabouts can they find you? Where's the best place to go?
Probably my website, essentially shamanic.co.uk, or come and find me on Facebook. I am one of the only few Chamberlin Kids spelt the way I spell it. So, and my Facebook, I do lives and stuff, not always about shamanic work, about crazy stuff I'm going through. But connecting with me on there is always a good idea.
Cool. So what I'll do is I'll post all the links underneath. So if anyone wants to come to your website or visit your Facebook site, then they can just click on the links below. Okay. Thank you so much, Viv, for explaining about power animals and soul retrievals. I feel like I have greater understanding myself. So good. I hope that it helps others as well. So thank you very much, Viv.
Awesome.